Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where investors with a special emphasis on couples can begin, continue, and deepen their journey to financial freedom together using the powerful vehicle of real estate investing to do it. Today on the show, we have a very powerful couple, Paula and her husband, Jonathan. They've co-founded a company called Apogee Capital. It's a multifamily real estate investing firm where they syndicate apartments in Texas and Oklahoma. And Jonathan is a real estate investor local to the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. He began his real estate career after having worked for 6 years in the aerospace industry and holding a BS and a master's degree in aerospace engineering from Texas A&M and from Virginia Polytech Institute. He's a member of Michael Blanc's and of the Deal Maker Mastermind. And his past real estate projects include a 100-unit multifamily in the Tulsa MSA as a general partner and 42 units in Austin as a limited partner, and also numerous residential real estate investments and a top-rated short-term rental business in the Arlington Entertainment District.
And Paula Nichols is a real estate professional with experience in project management, investment analysis, and contract negotiation. She began her career as a management consultant where she worked on multiple projects with clients in banking and utility sectors. She's also worked as a pre-development project manager where she manages single-family rentals and lot development projects ranging from 14 to 25 million in value. She holds a bachelor's degree in business administration finance from Texas A&M, and she is also a licensed real estate agent. So yeah, I agree. This couple was so dynamic, and what I really loved was that they just shared the nitty-gritty, the real rawness behind what it takes to start off in real estate investing. And I think that's what listeners need to hear when they first start out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what was really important about this show was how they were able to grow while working full-time jobs into first starting out in a house hack and then going into rental property and then building short-term rentals and then multifamily from there. And you can totally tell that this couple is in sync and they have a lot of great advice and gems of wisdom for you guys that I know that you're going to absolutely love. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring them on. All right, and we have Paula and Jonathan in the room with us. Good to see you guys. How are you today?
Doing well, thank you. Appreciate you having us on.
Yeah, it's great to have you guys here. I heard your guys' story a couple of weeks ago, actually, and I just decided you guys had to be on the show. This is an amazing, amazing story. So we're really excited to dig in here a little bit. So first of all, maybe you guys can start by telling us how you guys got interested in real estate investing, and maybe if it's either together or individually, whatever works for you guys. We want to hear about that.
It was interesting because I remember when I bought our house when we first got married, we were just purchasing a house to live in. So this was 4 years ago. And as I was going to the mortgage broker to sign the closing documents and all that, he said, "Hey, this would be a great house that like one day you could rent this house out or something like that for an investment." And that's the first time I ever remember someone mentioning investing to me. And I thought, well, that's kind of odd. Like, why would anyone want to do that? And so I just kind of put the thought in the back of my mind. And then it was about a year after that, I picked up the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, no surprise, like everyone, and started reading through it. And that's really what changed my mindset. You know, when I finished that book, I didn't know exactly what I needed to do. I just know that I needed to do something with real estate investing. And so that's kind of where our learning journey began. You know, like everyone, we started listening to podcasts, reading books, and then started collecting some residential properties here near where we live. And then about a year and a half ago, made the jump into the multifamily sector.
Yeah. And to add to that, I'm Colombian, and so my parents moved to the U.S. in 2006, and they lost quite a bit of money on the stock market because they didn't understand what the stock market was, and they sold in 2008. In addition to that, they bought an apartment in Florida with an arm, and you know how those things worked back then. And so they lost a lot of money on that. And so I decided that I was going to go into business school so I could learn those lessons and not lose money. And in around 2011, my parents were able to buy their first house in Austin, and I acted as their basically realtor. They didn't have a realtor. I was their realtor, and I was only 15 at that time. And I saw how that home in Austin became basically their opportunity to retire. And so, you know, what Jonathan's story, as he mentioned, that was a big part of that. And then just complementing to my personal experience of seeing how real estate could really transform your opportunities to retire was really great. And so all of those coupled.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. Very, very true story too. That's very cool that you guys are willing to share that with us. We're really honored. One thing I wanted to talk about though is let's back up a little bit before that. I know, Paula, there's a very clear impetus to why you guys are interested in investing in real estate, but Jonathan, I want to hear more from you. What made you pick up that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? Like what got that all started for you?
Yeah, so I've always been a pretty voracious reader. I read everything and kind of all genres, mostly nonfiction, but I'm always trying to learn things. And so, I knew it was a New York Times bestseller. A lot of people read it. A lot of people had gotten value from it. It wasn't necessarily recommended to me from someone, but I just thought, hey, I should read this. I might get something out of it, but it was definitely one of those books that, was a step above that in how it changed my mindset. Like I said a minute ago, the thing I think is that when you walk away from that book, you don't necessarily know what to do. It's not a how-to book, but instead it addresses the most important thing, which is starting with changing your mindset and how you think about things. And so once I understood that, I could then go find other books and resources to learn the how-to side of things.
That makes a lot of sense, and it's a great place to start. So that's awesome. Really, really, really thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to also comment on just Paula's story about like being, representing her parents at 15 years old, and what was that like? And I like to kind of hear where the spark came in terms of like, at 15, not a lot of teenagers are, have that insight of like, hey, I can do this.
So I was not a licensed real estate agent, just to clarify, but I just knew my parents had the American dream when they came to this country. And unfortunately in Florida, like that was not the American dream. Losing money was not the American dream. And so when we moved to Texas, we saw the opportunity of having jobs and opportunity of, like buying a home in Austin, right? And so back in 2011 or so when they bought their home, like I knew I had heard Dave Ramsey and all of these people say location, location, location. And so I told him, let's buy in West Austin, let's buy now. And I just shared whatever I was learning in Google, right? And I told him like, let's buy here. And so they did. And fortunately, their home appreciated almost to double the price that it was originally. And that's really their card for retirement. And so I was just really hungry to make their dream come true and make that American dream more of a reality instead of a disappointment. And so that kind of triggered my excitement for real estate and just help them.
Awesome. Thank you. What attracted you guys to Austin of all cities?
Well, my mom is a very risk taker. And so we were living in Miami and she Googled best cities to raise kids and best universities. And so she Googled that and she learned that there's good schools, good job opportunities in Texas. And we just literally packed and moved to Austin without ever being there. And so I would say that I'm a risk taker because of my mother and I do my, research before moving, but it was all her and that's why we moved.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I was just curious because I I always love meeting people from Austin.
Google really led us to Austin.
Yeah. That's awesome. Very cool.
It's a wonderful place for them to live too. They're very social. They enjoy experiencing the culture, eating the food, outdoors. So, I mean, they love it there. They still live there and we go down all the time. So,
yeah, it's a beautiful place for sure.
Yeah. What else? Yeah. So I know you guys live in Dallas and because I read that you both went to A&M, correct?
Correct.
Is that where you met? Can you give a background of how you guys met? Because it sounds like from what I'm hearing so far that you developed your interest in real estate separately. Is that right? Or can you kind of walk us through how you met and how, you both discovered your shared interest in real estate, or did one influence the other? Can we learn a little bit about that?
When I was a senior, well, throughout my entire time in school, I was in an organization. It was called Circle K. It's a service organization. It's the collegiate version of the Kiwanis Club. And so I was a member of that the whole time. And I got to my last year and was a very active member. And then so she joined it.
He was the president and I was like a freshman.
And then she was a freshman in the club. So ironically, we were just friends during that time, but good friends, we'd hang out and stuff like that. So I graduated and moved up to Dallas and started working my W-2 job. And then a few years later, we kind of stayed in touch and stuff. And then a few years later, we started dating, and then she wound up getting a good job offer here in Dallas and moved up here. And then we got married within a year after that. So,
Yeah.
Awesome.
and as far as the interest in real estate, honestly, for me, my story starts later than hers because it's really when I picked up that book, I would say. And so that was after we were already married, but it was independent in the sense that I was just reading and learning on my own. It had nothing to do with what we're doing together. And then once I read it, I was like, hey, Paula, like we should talk about this,
Yeah. And how my story kind of combines to our marriage is that, I helped my parents purchase their first home. And then I'm like, okay, what does the good students do? They go to business school and get a degree and do all of that. And so I did that and went into consulting. And my first year into consulting, I'm like, this is great, but like, I feel that I have a ceiling on my growth and on my opportunities to grow as fast as I wanted to grow and be able to help retire my parents. And so when we read the book together, I was like, this could be an opportunity to accelerate the growth that I'm currently seeing in my consulting job. And so I feel that after that, I went to I remember this so well, my CA, which is like my advisor in my consulting job. He was like, hey, I listen to Bigger Pockets. I also invest in real estate. You should too. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so after that, we started listening to Bigger Pockets. We went to a road trip in Europe. And I remember all we did was listen to Bigger Pockets for hours. And Tom Mosley became basically the person who introduced me to Bigger Pockets. And that's just one more seed in our journey of real estate.
Wow, that's great, you guys. Thanks for sharing because, a lot of people when they first start out, they aren't really on the same page, but it sounds like you guys brought sparks with you from different directions that kind of lit up into this common flame, right? Of where you guys are now working together, listening, actively engaged with one another. What I want to ask you next from Sophie's great question about how this goes into marriage and into your guys' early career in real estate investing. What did that look like once you guys first realized that you guys can start working together? Like, what were the roles when you guys were first starting out? Who did what? And what were the conversations like at home when you guys decided that, oh my gosh, we could actually do some of this?
I think there is like leading by strengths, right? Like there is a book about that and just what are we good at, naturally really good at. And so I think that Jonathan, although I went to school for finance and, Excel is like my second home, Jonathan was very good at analytical and numbers. And he always kind of found a desire to like understand and underwrite deals. And so that's kind of where we went first. And then for me, it was mainly like relationship and investors relationship and more of like the social part, but as well like being good enough with math and deals that I can explain to an investor what the deal is and what their benefits could be. So that was like our almost division of tasks when it came to multifamily. When it came to our single family and short-term rental business prior to the multifamily deals, it was kind of all hands on deck. So I did the decor and the designing of our little, short-term rentals. And he did, the finding the deal and as a real estate agent license. So I help, close the deal. And so at first it was like all the cooks in the kitchen. And then we learn what our strengths are and then learn how to divide those tasks. And to be honest, we're still in that process of like, okay, you're better at that than I am. I'm better at this. And so it's just dividing those tasks based on strengths.
I honestly feel like that between the two of us, we have our own strengths and weaknesses, but we have a lot of similarities too. Like we both can analyze deals and look at numbers. We both can find deals. We both have, I guess, enough people skills to go talk to brokers or investors or whatever. I think one of the best benefits is the accountability and being able to push each other. So, I've always been a motivated person, someone that works hard. And, for Paula, in her story and just like the sacrifices her family made when they moved here and just going through life, I think those two things combined together, we both very much have we're going to win sort of attitude. And so it's not a matter of if, it's just what is it going to take? What do we have to do to make it happen? So I honestly think that's the biggest benefit more than any, one individual strength.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a good answer because I think that over time, as long as you continue to talk with one another about what your goals are and what it is that you're trying to do and where you're having difficulties, then the issues that come up in investing in real estate start to become minor, right? As you start to become more proficient in what it is that you're doing, you start to learn what it is that you need to do in order to be successful, and you're talking with your spouse, and so that's why we always think that having doing this as a team, doing it among two people and always bouncing ideas off of each other and making sure that one person is sandy checking another, it's a
Yeah.
great way to build a relationship and also build a business. And so I think that's a very cool thing that you guys are doing right there. Let me back up a little bit more. I want to talk about single families because most people that are listening here today are probably wanting to start in single family or want to do something that they can get their head around, right? Because, multifamily seems really intimidating. It's actually not, but it's the easiest thing to start off with is single families. So
Yeah.
when you guys were in single families, tell us about how you guys made your first purchase. Like, were there any doubts? Were there any concerns that you guys had when you're putting your hard-earned money into this property? You're putting a down payment, and can you walk us through what that looked like, both from the perspective of purchasing it and then also the conversations that you guys were having at home?
Yeah, so it's funny because our first idea when we learned about investing was we were going to save $40,000 from our jobs and just go buy another single family house and start renting it. And then one day Paula came home. I guess she'd been listening to Bigger Pockets or something. She said, "We're doing the wrong thing." She's like, "We have to move." And I was like, "Move? Why am I going to leave my house?"
House
She's
hack.
like, "We have
Wow.
to move. There's this thing called a house hack. And basically, the low down payment we got on this house, we can get it again if we move somewhere else and do that." So we started looking with some realtor friends of ours just at other single family houses. Well, about that same time, in terms of kind of that mindset growth and that process, we went to a meetup, which is to this day probably our favorite meetup in DFW. We go every single month. And the lady that runs it, her name is Sherry. She's really a great person. And we walked in the first day and she's like, "Hi, I'm Sherry. I'll put you on my buyer's list. We'll get you something to buy right now." And she's like, "Y'all don't need to buy a house. You need to buy a fourplex." And so she started just pushing us to buy a fourplex. And so I think it was less than 2 weeks later, after we'd been looking already for 4 months, in 2 weeks, we're under contract. And sometimes you need that
Wow.
person that just has that next level of energy that's just go do something. And yeah, quite honestly, we overpaid a little bit for it. And there were definitely some rough situations and stories along the way. And there were definitely times we were both nervous, but at the end of the day, we got it done. So, and today as far as our single family portfolio, we make more money on that property than any other property. So
It was quite amazing. And to be honest, and I don't know if there's any ladies out there listening to this, but as a woman, I felt that I'm empowered. Yes, I study finance, I run the numbers, I'm strong and I'm good and I'm ready to do this. I was the one who said the house hack idea. But when the deal came, I felt a little bit frightened. I'm like, are we overpaying for this? And then I started over analyzing every single situation. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? Oh, what could go wrong? And I couldn't really see what could go well, right? And I think it's just so well, as you were saying, Derek, before, of just kind of that partnership help. And I just really appreciated Jonathan being that sound mindset of things are gonna go right, and we're gonna go do this, and it's gonna be okay. And I'm here I see the numbers, but what if things don't go well? What if the economy goes down? What if blah, blah, blah? And it was just so helpful to have a partner and my husband who was just let's write down the risk that you're thinking, and let's, based on that and the likelihood of those actually becoming real, risk, then let's move forward from then. And so I don't know, I just wanted to share that because it has really helped me to learn how to navigate those kind of risks that you may not live daily at your 9 to 5 or whatever, your W-2 job. You don't really may have to make those financial decisions, every day. And so.
And then the one thing I forgot to add that I tell everyone who's going into investing and thinking about doing a house hack. So the memory that will always stand out in my mind the most clearly is, we decided when we bought the fourplex, we were going to move there. That's what we signed and said we were going to do on our mortgage. And that's what we did. And it's in a neighborhood that's safe, but definitely not like upscale, totally different than what we lived in before, like very much C-class kind of neighborhood, right? Definitely not the kind of place if you're like, wow, where's my kid going to be, 5 years after they graduate and have their awesome W-2 job and all this. Definitely not where you would expect them to be. And I remember moving all our stuff into this tiny apartment and going to bed that night. And, it was just loud and and I just remember like taking forever to fall asleep, but thinking in my head, like, wow, if we stay here a year, like we will win. Like if we can get through this, we're going to win. And so that's the thing that always stuck in my mind is like, this is going to be like the hardest moment. But if we get through this, like we will make it. And so that's something I always share with everyone because sometimes you just listen to the podcast and stuff and you think it's all easy and if you're smart enough, it's going to happen. But like, if you aren't willing to make some kind of sacrifice, you're not going to make it. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, very well said, both of you guys. And we couldn't agree more with everything. And that's been our experience as well. And very, very cool to see some fellow house hackers starting their real estate investing journey the same way. That's very, very cool. I wanted to ask you, just a quick follow-up on those conversations when you guys decided to move forward with the fourplex. How important would you say your preparation was to give you the confidence? I mean, obviously there was probably some over analysis paralysis, right? But you had someone pushing you, right? Like, can you guys speak a little bit to that over analysis paralysis and then the actual just making the decision, okay, we're going with it? Can you dive a little bit more deep into that? Like, what types of conversations did you guys have that made you say, okay, this risk is worth it? The timing is right. Like, could you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about it because I was definitely the over analytical and I was not expecting to be that person. And so I knew that I wanted something more. I wanted more than just my W-2. There was that hunger that already existed prior to finding the deal. And so I think that you need that. You need that desire to make that step, right? And then when you have to have that criteria. And so when you have the criteria prior to finding the deal, it's kind of hard to look back to your criteria and be like, oh, but I still want to say no, right? And so we had the criteria of like, okay, we want a house hack. We want bigger than 1 unit would be great. And we want these numbers to work. We don't want to lose money. And so when Jonathan started like reminding me, like, look at the numbers, like we're not going to lose money. What is the worst case scenario, right? Like, I think thinking of the worst case scenario and then realizing that A, it's very not likely that case will happen. And B, it's not even that bad if that were to happen, then that's when we're like, yes, we're in. And like, yes, we paid over, asking price and even appraised price at that point here in Arlington, Texas. But we look back and we're like, it's the best decision we've made.
Oh my gosh.
We make great cash flow. We're about to refinance it and it's already coming great. And so obviously be smart, look at your numbers, but then if your numbers tell you otherwise, just take that step of faith.
I love that, Paula. I honestly thought before we began this call that I had a lot in common with Jonathan, but I think Paula, you and I are like now I've changed my mind. I think, but I think Paula and I think the exact same way because like Sophie had to really help me when we were first buying our properties in Indianapolis out in a different market. She really helped me. Said, well, what's the worst case scenario? And she kind of helped put things in perspective because I was doing the numbers. I was trying to catch up to her. And so I just love, like, that's why we're so big on this dynamic of this husband-wife combo to help fill in some of the gaps, right? And overcome the fears and combining the skills. And so you guys are doing that beautifully. So thank you. I just wanted to applaud you guys for that and give you the honor that you deserve for starting that fourplex, because once you get one, it just kind of the cat's out of the bag, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
and it's quite addictive too, right?
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So now what I wanted to do, unless you have a question.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, a quick one, or maybe not be so quick, but I'm having such a good time just listening to you both share your story. Again, it's always so refreshing and so wonderful to hear like couples, that your business partners, like partners and business partners in life, and you both have alluded to just mindset, in various ways, ways that you've had to change the way you look at a certain circumstance. And then Paula, you also mentioned that, I thought I was a certain way, but actually I wasn't. This surprised me. So these situations that come up, it almost like shows you almost like different parts of yourselves, right? And so I just wanted to ask you both, what advice do you have for new couples starting off who may not be on the same page, who may not be quite clear on what their vision, what their goals are? What kind of advice can you give them to help them be a little bit more synergistic going forward on this whole journey?
I was going to say, marry someone that is, really motivated, that will push you, and then just follow along with them. So, because that's what worked for me. So, no, that's a hard question because I feel, at least for me, I haven't necessarily been through that experience. I hear other folks, and I'll just say guys, because obviously it's easy to relate to, who are like, well, my wife's not necessarily on board with the whole real estate thing. What do I do? And it's kind of challenging for me to give advice since I haven't necessarily had that same experience, but I have had that experience in maybe other areas of our life or marriage, if not the investing thing. And I think a lot of it is, one, seeing things from another person's side, really stepping back and thinking through it, and where they're coming from and why they're coming from that direction. We've both had really big mindset changes, in our investing journey. And even though we've been on the same page about wanting to invest and about the projects that we've chosen to take on, there's other things that have been more challenging. So I know, like, for example, one area where Paula's really pushed me is, I grew up where I felt like my identity was very much in who I was in my career. Like, I went into engineering and I was like, I'm going to be a VP or something like that one day. Like, and I worked hard. I worked, like a dog the first few years that I was in the corporate role. And I had very little to show for it at the end of those few years. And, Paul was just kind of like, hey, what if you put your effort into something else that would actually, pay you for the level of effort that you're doing, and a lot of that for me was kind of undeveloping my identity from being in a career and to more of like who I am and who I'm going to be to other people. Because that's really what it's all about, right? No one cares when you die, if you were an engineer or an accountant or whatever. They care about who you were to the people that were in your life. And so honestly, that's been one of the biggest things that I think maybe we weren't on the same page. At least for me, it was a really big change. And a lot of that was just Paula just gradually over time being like, hey, you should think about this. You should think about this, until it's kind of started to sink in.
I think for me, just the way that we've kind of grown together on real estate is it has been like almost like a spiritual journey along my career journey, right? And like we're both, Christians, and faith was something that really was the foundation of our marriage. And so it's how is for us, how is God leading us into this? And for me, it was like that battle of God is can I do this? Like, am I ready for this? Am I equipped for this? And there are days that I'm like, am I equipped for this? And so for me, it's really like in a spiritual journey to really understand what's God's vision for our marriage, for our life, and not only just make money and like have a bigger home. That's not our focus or target, but it's how can we help our parents? How can we help our friends? How can we help, the families in Mexico that we like to volunteer with, or the families in Colombia, where I'm from. And it's really like that almost like way of dreaming bigger than what we originally dreamt, right? It's not only just making the American dream for us, but is how can we really help other people? And I think that really propels us to overcome whatever obstacle comes our way.
Very well said, you guys. That's awesome. And you guys definitely are becoming bigger people for sure. That's actually what I wanted to get into next, because when we last left off on our story, right, we were talking about single families and we're talking about mindset. That is a perfect segue into how you guys found multifamily. As you guys know, there's a big difference between going from single family mentality to multifamily mentality. And maybe I shouldn't paint it as such a large gap and, like a big picture, like all of a sudden you're, there, but there is a difference. So can you guys explain when that switch happened? Because I know, the house hacking thing works definitely in doing small single family rentals or duplexes, that works out. But let's talk a little bit more about your transition to multifamily, which has ended you guys up in a lot of great places recently. So let's talk about that progression. Can you guys talk about how you got started in multifamily, and then how you got into your first maybe syndication or maybe a JV? Just want to talk through that a little bit.
So it was interesting because I remember at the same meetup where we met this lady who helped us buy our fourplex. They had kind of a pro panel or something asking questions, and a couple of the guys up there, were introduced as people who did multifamily. And she's like, "Hey, they don't buy just single family houses. These guys are buying apartments." And I've always been one of those people that when I see someone that's like just way that far ahead in my mind, it just really piques my curiosity. Like, how did they do that? What went into it? And about that time, we were still trying to settle on what we were doing. And so we were looking into doing like house flipping. And so we kind of debated a little bit. And this was maybe 6 months after we got investing. Like, let's just say right after we bought the fourplex. And honestly, we kind of shelved the idea for a short while. I was like, I need some experience or some idea of what's going on before I do this. But the more I learned and the more of these people that I got to know on a personal level and, go eat dinner with them, have relationships, I realized like, hey, if I'm serious about this and I don't want to be a landlord as a job, then, multifamily is the way to go. If you really want to have an impact, then you have to scale. And, with multifamily, you have that ability to scale. And so we spent, and this is after we had already learned a tremendous amount about real estate and already had a tremendous amount of experience in the single family. We probably spent another like 6 months just reading, just listening to podcasts on multifamily, just learning the basics of underwriting, and then jumped in, I would say full force or about the beginning of the pandemic a year ago. So that's kind of high level. I guess since then, we've continued to look at deals. I've analyzed about like 150 deals in the last year, just to give you an idea. So a lot of people don't realize that because they look at houses and, they go look at 20 or 30 and they find one. It's a lot harder in multifamily, especially in this market and in our specific market here in Dallas. And, we're about to close our first deal now here in a few weeks. So that's kind of how long and how difficult the journey's been. And so I think the biggest things in terms of the mindset is that, one, if you want to grow, you have to scale, and multifamily offers you the opportunity to do that. The other thing is you have to leverage, and that involves oftentimes using other investors' money, which is an opportunity actually to help people who otherwise would have no opportunity to be in real estate. And so that's really become a big part of our why in the multifamily industry, is being able to help our passive investors who they don't have as much, real estate knowledge or experience, that they want to go be active operators in real estate, or maybe just time, but they could greatly benefit from adding real estate to their portfolio. And so, but obviously with that larger projects, with the scale comes a lot more responsibility, right? Because if I go buy a fourplex and run it into the ground and lose everything, then it's just, my money, it's just my risk. But when you start, investing with other people's money, it really is a lot bigger scale in my mind. Even looking back, yeah, there's things that, mental hurdles and stuff, but even still, it's something you have to take extremely seriously. And so it's for that reason that I think there's so many less people in multifamily than single family.
In addition to what Jonathan just said, is that I saw single family and I feel like some people can retire out of single family, but it just wasn't, I feel like, utilizing our skills that we have already developed in our current careers. And so like in finance and consulting, like in all of these years of experience, like I have learned some other things, right? And then Jonathan in aerospace engineering, like he has learned some skills that you can leverage at the level of multifamily, right? Like you don't have to, you are able to manage, like, in project management, you're able to manage the property management, you're able to execute things on time and in budget. And so I personally wanted to utilize those skills at that level. And I wanted for him to leverage those skills that he developed in his, engineering career and now in the real estate dream that we have. And so I think that multifamily, yes, provided the opportunity to scale, provided the opportunity for us to help other people, and then also provided the opportunity for us to leverage those already earned skills that we have. And so I think that was just like when we learned it and when we were able to understand, like, yes, you too can do it. Like, this is not just for those specific people. Like you can learn and you can, grow and become one of those people. I think that we were very excited and committed to put the time and the effort that took us to do our first deal.
Yeah, awesome. Congratulations, you guys, too, as well. I forgot to congratulate you on that first property that you guys are getting, but that's amazing. And the journey that you guys have gone through has been pretty inspiring because, starting out with the fourplex, you guys are very young as well. Jonathan was telling me his age earlier on when we were talking, and it's just really impressive what you guys have built, how young you are. And as you guys grow a little bit older, like this business exponentially grows. And so I'm really excited to see what the future is going to hold. Yeah, you guys are on such a great growth trajectory right now. So what I wanted to ask you is, throughout this entire journey, can you guys maybe name one low point or like a tough deal or something that you guys have worked through? Was there anything that you guys would be willing to share there?
Which one?
Which one? That's spoken like a true real estate investor.
I can come up with one, and I think that Jonathan alluded to it earlier during the conversation, and it's when we moved to the fourplex, right? I feel like until then, we've lived in like nice places and like we've enjoyed, our families had big dreams for us, and it felt like we were taking 2 steps back or probably 10 steps back to moving to a place that was maybe a little bit more humble, smaller. But I can tell you, and it was hard. It was small, and then the pandemic hit, and we were living in that. I remember like working in that 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and just thinking like, oh my gosh. And we had short-term rental furniture, and I told Jonathan, we're not going to rent a storage room. We're going to bring it all into a 2-bedroom apartment because, maybe we shouldn't have sacrificed as much. But I was like, no, we're going to do this. And I remember thinking like, wow, this place is very small. It's just not what we dreamt a real estate dream to be. And I remember thinking at that night, like, I just felt like God was giving me like strength to be like, this is just part of the journey. Like there will be, you're going to turn the page and it's going to be a new day and it's going to be fine. And so it was fine. Like we then moved out of the apartment, bought our home, and I think like everyone was fine, but it's just, there are going to be hard days when you're going to sacrifice so that you can have that long-term benefit. And maybe some people are going to ask you, why did you do that? Like your friends may ask you like, oh, why are you not living in this neighborhood? Or why are you not driving that car? Or why are you not going out with us on the weekend instead you're painting your house? Or whatever your step is right now in your journey. Like some people may wonder why. And it's okay. Like you're in your own journey and just do the thing that you feel called to, and it's going to be fine. Like there's going to be a new day, and that new day will have many other benefits. And
So I think for me, the low point was a little bit different. So, after you buy, you have like 60 days legally to move into one of the units. And we had a tenant that was leaving, let's say 30 or 40 days after we closed it, right? So we stayed in our house for a short time and then moved. But Memorial Day came up. So this was, a couple of years back. Paula was actually going to Columbia to visit family during that time. And all my friends and everyone, they're going off to the lake, they're going here or there and whatnot. And the folks moved out of that unit we were going to move into. So I had to go renovate it. And because we paid a high price, I didn't have money tacked on to go pay someone to do the renovation. I was just going to do it myself. And for the record, anyone listening, I'm not a renovator. Like I can paint. That's probably about it. So I'd had no business being in there, but I'm there by myself the whole weekend. And I remember getting there early in the morning and just working. And it's like 9:30 at night. I'm exhausted. I haven't eaten. I'm like scraping popcorn off the ceiling and painting walls and all kinds of stuff. And we did hire someone to put in the floor. So I'm like trying to talk to them and make sure they're going to show up the next day and all this. And I remember just walking like 3 blocks down the street to go eat dinner at CC's Pizza, and then just come back and work some more. And then, so I think that was probably the lowest point for me, as far as just like loneliness or difficulty. But then ironically, it was like a week later, we have a friend who lives right down the street from us. We know him through a local organization that we volunteer for. And his name is Blake. And Blake was like, dude, why didn't you just call me? Like I would have come and helped you. Like all you had to do is just pick up the phone and call me. And
Oh man.
so when we got to renovating the next one, I just called Blake and I was like, dude, you want to like come paint with me, you know? And so literally, that was just cool to see that, other people do care about your journey, even people that necessarily don't have anything to do with real estate. And ironically, Blake has helped us on literally just about every project we've done in some way or another. Like he always comes by to help or help move, or in the house that we currently live in, he helped do a good part of the renovation too. So kind of a low point and then a high point, coming out of it.
Yeah, great story. Thank you.
Yeah, that's so cool that because we definitely resonate with the like, oh my God,
All
you
of it.
work all day and then you go renovate and you
Yeah.
like, and we did a lot of our learning through YouTube University and just like trying to figure it out as you go along. So yeah, props to you guys for just like crushing it and moving through that. Also, again, for our audience, you guys are a really, really busy couple. You work, you're still currently working W-2s, correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Both of us.
How do you balance it all? What does your day look like? And how do you keep it all together? And does balance even exist? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I just want to kind of go back to what Jonathan was sharing about his lowest point. And I think that starting with single family really teaches you like, this is what it might look like if you don't go get a deal in like Memphis, Tennessee, where there's high cash flow deals. If you buy in the DFW, you may be so slim on your budget that you may have to do either some of your work yourself or like rely on your friends. And that may be a challenge. And that may not be your strength. Like if your strength and your love for painting, it's not there, that's not what you should be doing. Let that be the painter's job because he is talented at that and he loves it. And so for us, we had to do it ourselves at the beginning and, trying to like be very like conscious about our money and like be very mindful of that. But then as we took a step, as we grew and we're like, okay, what's scalable? As we were talking about, we kind of learned that our strengths are not there. My strengths are like a business development. Like I was just in a happy hour with like a lot of my coworkers and like I enjoy talking to them and sharing our journey. And like that's where my strength is. And his strength is like talking to brokers. And so when we kind of grew out of that, we were able to at least, focus our time after work on doing things that we're better at and then don't tax us as much because now Jonathan could be in his office, talking to a broker versus going and painting, right? And that may be a little bit easier for him and may actually work better with his W-2 right now. And same for me, like I can go to, I'm working for a developer right now and I'm learning a lot about multifamily and market research. And I get to talk with a lot of people who are investing lots of money here in the DFW. And I get to learn that. And then I get to come home and kind of apply those lessons into our business. And so I don't know, I think it's just finding where can you create synergies on your strengths, your current jobs and your dream, right? If you're not a painter, or if you're not like a sheetrock guy, like can you hire the experts so that you can move on and do those things that you can be better at?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct. I think it's just hard, just to give you an idea of like what, we didn't have that mindset in the very, very beginning when we were rehabbing. Yeah. And if we were listening to this podcast now and hearing like Paula's advice, I'm like, well, yeah, let's hire a painter. What are we doing? But absolutely. Yeah, you're 100% correct, Paula. Thank you for emphasizing that.
Well, and just to be clear, like we still, we are just coming out of that phase, right? Like we still go back and we're like, oh, I think we could save this much dollars if we do it ourselves. And it's like, hold on, how much is our hour? We should have an hourly rate. We need to rate ourselves an hourly.
Yep.
We're just now transition from kind of that mentality and really see the fruit of it emotionally.
Yeah, and as you both are transitioning out of that, going back to my earlier question of like, how do you both organize your day and are there morning routines? Are there like non-negotiables throughout, self-care, things like that help you take care of your mindset, take care of your own personal growth?
So I'm definitely not the best example of this question because I'm just kind of go. And especially with, 2 jobs now between the real estate and my W-2, I start working pretty early and I work till pretty late, pretty much every day, even on the weekends. But I think that, first of all, you mentioned non-negotiables. I think for me, that comes down to faith and health and time with family, and so I try, every day to wake up and pray for my friends and my family. And I try to get a workout in every morning. My hobby is doing triathlon and running. And so to me, that's a non-negotiable. Like, I'm going to get up and work out before I do anything. Now, because I'm, get up pretty early, I probably finish that before most people wake up. So I haven't really lost any time there. I just get it done really early. Then after that, I mean, it's a grind. I mean, there's no joke about it. I'm not a big TV watcher, or I don't waste a lot of time. So, pretty much all that gets spent to real estate. And when it comes to the whole balance thing, like I said, I'm definitely not an example, but one book I read, I think it was The One Thing, where they talk about, there's actually several books, but in The One Thing, they talk about being way out of balance for a season of time to accomplish something big, and the idea is that you don't stay there forever, but that by, being out of balance for that short time, you're able to accomplish way more. And it actually, the thing that comes to my mind with that is, we're in engineering school, and we were studying, I was in aerospace engineering school. And so when you're studying rockets and a rocket takes off and it launches, you have what's called the escape velocity, right? And basically the idea is that the rocket has to hit this certain speed or it will not leave the earth. It will come back down. And it takes a tremendous amount of power for it to be able to hit that speed. But unless it puts out that power, it will not take off. And I think it's the same thing that's true with any big goal or endeavor in life, is that you have to, before you jump into it, weigh out the cost and see if you're willing to pay it. But most likely, you're going to have to put in some big amount of effort in order for it to take off, or it's just not going to happen. So, what I'm doing today, I hope I'm not doing 5 years from now. And I hope, 10 years from now, I'm sitting on a beach somewhere. But, right now I have to work hard. So that's kind of, maybe it's not the story everyone wants to hear, but I think it's the honest story.
Very good. Yeah, excellent, excellent. Paul, I wanted to give you an opportunity also to speak to that as well, to speak about your routine, any non-negotiables and things that are important to you.
So I'm not the rocket guy, but I think that, as I mentioned before, like for me, like spirituality and like faith in Christ is like so important. And so I do make sure that I wake up early enough so that I can have that, because it really centers me and it really gives me courage when I have none. And so for me, that's like foundational. And then I also run. And so if you're not a runner, just go on like a small run. I think it actually really helps you like center and really believe that if you can run, you can do anything, basically. But then after that, I think that when it comes to how to balance my W-2 and this, is just be honest to myself, is that there's only 24 hours in a day. And so like, if I'm spending like X amount of hours doing something, I can only spend the other hours doing something else. And so I think budgeting my time and being really realistic with my commitments really has helped me to like run myself to the ground, because I could, my sister, she is very much of an overachiever. And I was telling her, we're both Colombian. I was like, this American dream is actually harder than people told us about. Like we can follow ourselves into like workaholism. I don't know, like you just work yourself.
Workaholic.
Yeah, that. And it's like, I don't want to be that, but like, I feel so stressed sometimes. Like, I feel like we're just working so much. And so it's like taking a step back and it's like, what's important? What's the one thing that needs to get done today? As Jonathan mentioned, great book. And it's like, I'm going to get that one thing done. I'm going to have that one call. And it's okay if I don't get the 10,000 things that I need to get done, but I'm just going to get that one thing that's critical for our business or for our plan or for our goal. I'm going to get that done. And so that's kind of how I try to address it. I don't get everything done in one day. I just try to address the critical things, and I try not to fall into like the comparison trap, because some people are able to accomplish 10 times more because that's their focus. That's all they're doing. They don't have a W-2 job, but at this time I do. And so it's just balancing and just doing the best you can do every day.
Whoa. So there was a lot of wisdom to unpack there. That was amazing. Because I heard all of this in what you just said, Paul. I heard prioritization, non-comparison, and just understanding that you can do what you can do, and you just have to pick something, right? Well, and you have a W-2 job, so pick something with a high impact. if only I had met you like a year or two ago, I would have, and we had this conversation, I would have saved myself a lot of pain, and we would have done less arguing in our marriage. But
there's plenty of arguing.
yeah, no, it's all good. All I'm saying is that, like, this, I personally still struggle with this because I like to pack my schedule, and I'm still working a full-time job myself at this point. But we have an exit plan. We're kind of working towards that. But while you're working the full-time job, that analogy about rocket fuel, like using up all of that fuel to make it go, sometimes it feels like in a relationship that, like, there's nothing left for the other partner, or that there's no, like, there's nothing, like, all the energy is going in that one direction. And so that vision is super important if you're both aligned to say, okay, we're going to make this happen, and this is what we're looking for, the life at the other side. And I think that, like, a balance between, Jonathan, what you have, like, you definitely draw a line at family and exercise and faith. And I think that's a great place to start, definitely, and a great place to be. And then, Paula, you saying, well, I want to pick things to focus on, and I can only do what I can do. I think both of those perspectives are super, super important, and both work because you guys are just crushing it right now. So thank you for your wisdom there.
Yeah,
just had to point that out.
It's really important for our listeners to hear, like, the nitty gritty, the rawness and the authenticity and the honesty, because that's what, everyone has, everyone wants to portray, like, this beautiful linear, like, story but the reality of it is that it's raw, it's real. And, everything that you guys have just said, it's just so inspiring. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's the truth. So thank you guys for being authentic about that. So,
Yeah,
all right. So guys, I know we could keep this going pretty much all night if we wanted to, but what I want to do is I want to head into the final segment of our show, which is the rapid round. And during this segment, we ask 5 questions for every single guest. And then, as I like to say, we like to compare all the answers and then make judgments. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, we're going to have some fun here. We ask these questions just because we do it just to learn a little bit more about you guys, and then how other people can learn more deeper about what you guys do. So we have 5 questions, and do you want to go ahead and start?
So the first question is, what book has had the biggest impact on you and why? And it doesn't have to be business.
Say the Bible and Rich Dad and Poor Dad.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
So obviously I could say those 2 as well, but like I mentioned earlier, I like to read a lot of books, but one book in the multifamily journey that's really pushed me this year is actually, I'm going to say 2, The Miracle Equation and The One Thing, because they kind of go together almost, but just that idea of being able to accomplish a big goal that you didn't know was possible for you.
Great. Awesome.
All right, guys. And the next question is, if people wanted to emulate your success, what's the first actionable thing that they could do?
Just decide to do it. Just whatever you're able to do towards that, just take the first step. It doesn't matter what it looks like. Just take the first step. Even if it's just to vacuum your truck. I remember listening to this podcast in Bigger Pockets, this guy who vacuumed his truck to sell it. Random thing, but just whatever gets you closer, just small step, take it.
Awesome.
You have to learn. You have to have some set amount of time to learn. You don't want to do something dumb that you could have avoided with listening to 2 podcasts, but you have to set a timeline and then you have to do something, same as what Paula said.
Excellent. Thanks, guys.
Okay, next question is, what small thing do most people not know about you?
I'll go first. So for me, people who've known me a long time know this, but probably more recently don't. I was actually homeschooled growing up. I basically...
Wow.
When I was younger, my mom taught me, and then as I got older, I basically taught myself through high school. So
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I almost failed my English class in elementary, middle school, and high school, but then I had to learn English when I moved to the States. So I wasn't good at English until now, which I'm okay at English.
You're doing great.
I was going to use this language.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And how do you guys like to unwind and restore your creative juices individually?
for me, it's like I mentioned, I've been running for many years, and the last few years I've really been into triathlon. So that's what I do for enjoyment. I wake up and work out every morning. Sometimes I try to slip by the gym on the way home from work in the afternoon too. So
I enjoy just spending time with people, and specifically like my close friends. So just anytime with friends or family, like just not talking about business. That's how I replenish myself.
We both like traveling too, but obviously that's not something we do every day. So.
And nice, because that brings us to our last question. What's your favorite family vacation spot?
I think that we both really like this one. We went to Slovenia, which is very random. Did wide water rafting. And it was a stop between our trip or whatever. And we really, really enjoyed that. And so we haven't gone back, but we hope to do some more adventurous things in small countries. I don't know.
That was definitely a big highlight. And the first trip I ever went on out of the country, we went to the UK, to London. And so that's really special for me because it was my first time going out of the country. And Paula was kind of my tour guide because she'd been before. So
that's so cool. Very cool, you guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of your experiences, your wisdom, your authenticity with us, and more specifically with your audience and with ours. We really, really appreciate all that. So as we're winding down here, what I would like you guys to do is explain to the audience how people can learn more about you guys. Where can they find you online, and what do you guys have available for people to get to know more about you and your guys' story?
Yeah, so first of all, Paula built a really outstanding website for our multifamily investing company. That's a great place to start. It's www.apogee, APOGEE, MFC, like multifamilycapital.com. And on that, we have a lot of more information about us, about, kind of the projects that we take on. We also have a free ebook for people that are interested in passive investing. If you're like, what is this investing thing? It's a great place to read, and it takes like 10 minutes to read. So it's easy, Also, at least for me, I'm very active on LinkedIn. And so that's a great place to connect with me and chat with me. So.
Yes, absolutely. You have great stuff out there, and very, very helpful advice for many people. So I encourage all the listeners out there to get engaged in with Paula and with Jonathan on LinkedIn and their website. They got some great stuff for people who are just starting out. And even for those who are a little bit further along, if you're looking for an opportunity, I'm sure they'll be able to help you out in that regard as well. So, but that is the end of the show. And for all of you that listened all the way to the end, we really appreciate you and thank you. And we really hope that wherever you're listening to this or watching it online, that you like, subscribe, or comment, engage with us, and give us some feedback, because we want to get better. And as I always say, we want to appease the algorithm gods and get ourselves further up on the list so that we can get exposure to more people and help other people out as well, especially married W-2 couples like Paula and Jonathan are here today, and like us. So I'm super excited to be here, and thank you guys so much for listening. And this is Derek.
And this is Sophie.
And we're signing off today. Thank you so much.